We're on the same side. When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous. I'm about the past and I'm about the future.
Welcome back to Draftvice. We're here. It is Harry Van Ness. You know what that means, right? Probably, if you've seen the last few episodes, we're talking an early look at some of the teams in these in either the West or the South. If you looked at the title of the episode, you're probably knowing it's the West. So, and thus, how is everything, Harry?
Pretty awesome.
Pretty awesome. As he's yawning, excited.
This has been the highlight of my week for like the past few weeks. So
yes, and you can tell because he yawned. That's how Harry says he's happy.
It is.
So
I'm
yeah,
actually awake for this.
There you go. It is the NFC West we're talking about, and the AFC West, and there was news the last week where with contracts and stuff like that. So we're going to get to talk about a lot of moves because these two conferences cover a lot of the teams that have made some major moves this year, especially in the last month. So we'll just get right into it. Again, follow the podcast at Draftvice on Twitter, at Draftvice_football on Instagram. Follow the YouTube. The YouTube is very important. Go to the YouTube, subscribe, like, comment, follow, and watch because we have short videos, long videos, all the videos. So go to the YouTube. And now we are going to talk about, and Harry, how people find you.
I'm glad you asked. You could go on Instagram.com, as in the website, and just type in Harry Van Ness, all lower cases, and you could find me. And please do not inbox me dick pics.
So that means definitely inbox some dick pics, everybody. It's the reverse it's the reverse psychology of this. All right, now let's jump into it, right? We got some news this last week. We'll go right into the San Francisco 49ers, former Super Bowl appearance and NFC champions. They extend George Kittle, right? 5 years, $75 million. That's a lot of money.
Especially for a tight end.
Oh, yes, very much for a tight end. I think this is a good deal for both sides. Honestly, Shanahan gets his little chess piece back, right? He gets to keep a guy who is, also keep in mind they signed Jordan Reed in this just a couple weeks ago actually. So they're going to be utilizing a lot of two tight end sets, utilizing Jordan Reed's like athleticism, and then Kittle's does everything that you want a tight end to do: block, receive, step dance. Didn't know he did that, but apparently that was a big thing for him in college. So what do you think about this? This is a big $15 million a year. That's way more than the average for the last major tight end contract.
I do. It's like I like it. Jimmy is like Jimmy Garoppolo. He's not the best at getting it to the receiver. And plus Kittle, he's probably the best tight end. If not, he's right there with Travis Kelce. He's the best player on your offense, and he's an easy guy to get the ball to and pick up a couple of yards. So.
Yeah, you can't tell if he's going to be run blocking or he's going to be catching. He kind of reminds me of Gronk when he was with the Patriots. So now you have basically kind of what the Patriots had a few years ago between those two guys.
Except hopefully Kittle has more luck staying healthy than Gronk did, but
yeah. Well, I mean, he's been pretty healthy so far. That 5-year extension, he's making $15 million in 1 year of that deal. That's like 5 times more than what he made his whole rookie contract. That's pretty dang good, man. So let's go into the rest of this roster, right? They lose Joe Staley in the offseason, right? Kyle Shanahan gets them to a Super Bowl. They have a defensive line that is one of the sexiest defensive lines last year.
Lost DeForest Buckner.
They did trade away DeForest Buckner. They did draft Javon Kinlaw.
Yeah.
So to replace the and actually I think they essentially just used the pick that they had they were going to use. I guess they traded down one spot, got Kinlaw. They were like, listen, we're going to take a D tackle. We're going to get a D tackle. I think it was a good move on their part.
It was.
You're getting you now are filling out the depth on your D line. You now save yourself a little bit of contract worries in the next couple of years. Now that guy's over with the Colts, and they paid Armstead in the offseason. They got Nick Bosa, the Bosa with the smaller Nosa, if you will. We're going to talk about his brother in a little bit. They still have D Ford there. So, and they also signed Deion Jordan last week for the veteran minimum. Also, they had Ziggy Ansah in there, who they were talking. They offer him a veteran minimum contract. He's like, "Go pound salt, dude. I'm Ziggy Ansah. People know my name. Deion Jordan hasn't done anything ever. I barely did something, but I did something a few years ago. I was on a decent defensive line, arguably. So yeah, I actually do wonder where he's going to end up. But back to the Niners, right? Great defense, right? D-line, sexy as hell, right? And they've got depth on that D-line. They got good players on that D-line. Back end's a little questionable, right? Corners, you got Ancient. You got Ancient. He's older. But he's good. He played well last year. Richard Sherman, right? Elite guy.
And I think Richard Sherman was ahead of his time because in the Super Bowl, he was the first one of us to practice social distancing with Kansas City receivers.
I like that. Yeah, so you got Richard Sherman on one side. He's kind of getting a little bit older. Emmanuel Mosley's played pretty well last year. He actually ended up replacing, not Tankersley, the other guy who they had, Akilla Witherspoon, who was drafted a couple years ago. He ended up pushing him out, getting his own position as a corner. I still don't like the depth in their corner room, though. I feel like that's the one thing, like, what if Richard Sherman goes down again? What if the young guys don't play up to snuff? They didn't really address it much in the offseason. Safety-wise, they kept Jimmy Ward. I thought that was a good move on their end. So the back end's great. I think defensively, I think you're going to see, at minimum, it's going to be a good defense. It's going to be like the Bears, right? Like, could things fall apart? Sure. If a piece goes missing, the linebacking core is pretty good, right? Was it Quan
Alexander?
Quan Alexander, thank you. Yes, the name of the great Alexander the Great. So, yes, good linebacking core. Fred Warner's really good, too. I like the front seven. Back end worries me a bit. Offensively, though, right? Because that's Shanahan's bread and butter. We talked about it, extended Kittle. Joe Staley retires. What do? They trick everybody. They go ahead and trade with the Washington football team and traded peanuts. Like, I think literal peanuts to go ahead and get Trent Williams. What does that tell you? That's insane.
Yeah.
Why did nobody else make that deal? There were other teams who definitely needed a tackle, right? Oh, he's older. Yeah, but you're talking about a third-round pick next year and a fifth-round pick this year? That was nothing. Nobody else wanted to give up that much? Really? I thought that was insanity times 2. Maybe 3. So they got Trent Williams to go up on one side. They got Mike McGlinchey on the other. They got a Western Richburg, who I'm not, the biggest fan of, but okay, like he's a solid center, used to be on the Giants. Guard situation can do better, maybe, but they seem to do well with what they've got. At least last year they did. And honestly, maybe, again, everything, you look at Trent Williams, he might be the one chance to upgrade over Joe Staley. So, offensive line is great. Receiving core is completely whack, and I don't know who's in charge of what anymore. Deebo Samuel hurt his foot. He might not be ready for the first part of the season. So, you don't have him. You got Dante Pettis, who he's been MIA for the last year. I've not heard anything about Dante Pettis. He might be on the outside looking in, and I was a fan going into last year of Dante Pettis. I think he's a good route runner. I think he kind of reminds me a bit of Adam Thielen in that kind of mold of a player. I'm shocked I wouldn't be shocked if they don't like him. They might trade him. They did just sign Taven Austin this week. Like I said before, they got Jordan Reed. We already talked about Kittle. They no longer have Marquise Goodwin. They traded him to the Eagles, and then he opted out for the season. But they also drafted Brandon Ayuk, right? ASU receiver. So
what's up?
So, yeah, another one that Shanahan really liked him. Shanahan loved him. He loved him in the draft. They were willing to take him where they took Kinlaw. So, receiving core, a lot of intriguing pieces. They no longer have Emmanuel Sanders, but not for nothing. Emmanuel Sanders was a good piece for them last year. Like, he came on, and he definitely helped that offense. Them not keeping him actually kind of shocked me. I thought they were going to extend that man. So, they no longer have him.
Wait, where did Sanders end up going?
The Saints.
That's right.
Dude. That was an I did not see that one coming. We will talk about that when we talk about the Saints eventually. But yeah, so he goes to the Saints. They no longer have the veteran who helped move their offense last year. Deebo Samuel might not be playing. They did sign 2 guys, like I said. I think it's J.J. Nelson and Taven Austin, former Cowboy receiver and former Rams receiver at one point too. In fact, he was drafted by the Rams. Gadget dude. That's not a slur, by the way. Gadget dude's just a thing you have to say about guys who are better at jet sweeps than anything else in the NFL. That is a fact. Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Let's talk a little about him and a little bit Kyle Juszczyk, right? Fullback. I like fullbacks. Kyle Juszczyk. I think he's Kyle Shanahan's favorite player on the team. But let's talk about Garoppolo. You were talking about him kind of, former Patriot, by the way. So aren't you happy they traded him away?
I mean, they were going to... He would have been, the Pats would be successful with me at QB, so what difference does it make?
This is true.
I'm pissed that they have a former MVP playing quarterback for them now. So.
Yes. So anyway, with Garoppolo, I feel like the one issue is he was coming off an ACL last year, right? I was actually kind of worried about him. He did kind of have some up and down moments. He just lucked out that run game is crazy. They traded away Matt Breida. They still have Raheem Mostert, who was kind of the guy leading the room at the end of the year. And then Tevin Coleman's there. Jerick McKinnon. Like, remember that guy?
Oh, yeah.
He used to be on the Minnesota Vikings. He signed a big deal. Didn't do anything on the deal. It's the big worry about signing guys in free agency on big deals. This is why the NFL has a lot of non-guaranteed contracts, yet still this guy's been on that roster for like 2.5 years and still is guaranteed a little bit more money. So there you go. That's why I'm actually not going to go into kind of a moral to that story. But anyway, the Niners, very interesting team, right?
Yeah.
Do you think? I think they're definitely the leaders in this division, right? Potentially.
Along with Seattle, I think.
I agree. You want to break into Seattle?
Let's do it.
All right, we're going to break into Seattle. We will talk about what we think about the end of this division. We'll touch back on them a little bit, but we're going to go into Seattle now. You have a big thing with Seattle.
I do.
Being a former Jets fan.
Former Jets fan and also Ole Miss fan. They got Ole Miss legend DK Metcalf on there as well.
They got him in the second round. This is the weird thing with Seattle draft picks, right? They won't do well in the first round of the draft, but then they'll get guys like later on who you're just like, how the hell did they get that guy? And DK Metcalf was that guy. So yeah, they got DK Metcalf. They got a lot of speed at receiver. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and then they also signed Philip Dorsett in the offseason. That's a lot of speed at receiver to go along with your great quarterback, right? So, and anytime you have Russell Wilson, you are in the game. That's just a fact. It doesn't matter who else is there. He's like one of the few guys. You could literally put him on an island alone. He's just still constantly making plays. So we'll talk a little bit more about the offense, and then we'll get into the defense and probably why he's no longer a Jets fan. So receiving core looks interesting. I actually talked about I just did an offensive line episode and kind of reviewing my thoughts on it. I might be dropping Seattle's offensive line a little bit because they did get rid of their center, Justin Britt, in the offseason, who was actually maybe one of the better parts of that offensive line, which shocked me they got rid of him. They do still have Dwayne Brown. He's getting a little bit older, but I still think he's a solid piece. They drafted Damian Lewis. Outside of those three guys, like they have a competition kind of going for tackle and guard still. Jamarco Jones, who they drafted a couple years ago. Is J.R. Sweezy now there again? They get so many guys who wander into that offensive line room that it's the good thing is, though, I do think they have a better offensive line coach, right? They got rid of Tom Cable, who is now with the Raiders, who probably have one of the best offensive lines in the league, but he was a horrible coach when he was in Seattle.
And it's kind of ironic because Tom Cable actually used to be head coach of the Oakland Raiders, now the Las Vegas Raiders. And he was a horrible head coach, not surprisingly.
He was not a great offensive line coach, although now they just have a lot of talent. Although he helped develop Colton Miller very well, so I don't know, man. I'm very skeptical on the people who hate on the Seattle former Seattle offensive line coach Tom Cable. But still, his reputation in Seattle did not do him very well. They seem to have a better scheme, at least last year, on how they were handling stuff. They were a lot more run heavy. They might not have Chris Carson. They probably won't have Rashad Penny. They signed Carlos Hyde in the offseason. So running back room's okay. Offensive line, still a question. It's always a question. You still have Russell Wilson. Tight end, they got Greg Olsen. Yeah. I forgot about that for 5 minutes. And then somebody reminded me the other day, what do you think Greg Olsen's going to be doing in Seattle? And I'm like, well, maybe smoking weed and then go play the game.
Yeah.
Because now weed's a little bit more manageable in the NFL. And I don't know if Seattle's a big weed place. I don't know.
It is.
It is? All right. I guessed right.
If they catch some coffee in the locker room, he could just say it's COVID and no big deal.
Here you go. So let's get to the defense, right? They no longer have a first-round pick for the next 2 years. Why? Because they
got a generational talent
in Jamal Adams.
Yeah.
So, yes, their safeties are kind of in a better spot now. I'm blanking. So they got rid of Bradley McDougall. I think that's going to be a big loss, everybody. No, okay. They do have Quandre Diggs.
Yes,
Quandre Diggs to match up with to go along with your Jamal Adams. Their linebacking core, KJ Wright's still there. Their linebacking core's good. They got Bruce Irvin back. They got Reed still there at D tackle. I do not feel comfortable with their pass rush situation. Their corner situation, I'm okay with. Seattle just seems to kind of get stuff done with those corners, right? Trey Flowers and a couple of other dudes here and there. And it's they traded for the guy who was thought to be the accomplice of DeAndre Baker in the offseason, but then his charges were recently dismissed. I'm blanking on his name off the top of my head. Probably better... Quentin Dunbar?
Yeah.
Quentin Dunbar. No, it's not Quentin Dunbar. We'll touch base on that in a little bit. So yeah, he's back with the team. That was a good trade. They traded a 5th-round pick to get him from Washington. I think he's going to help their corner room as well. I think they have a solid back. I think overall the defense is going to be... The D-line is my question mark, right? Like, there's not a true...
Lost Jadeveon Clowney.
No Clowney, no Ansah. Not like either of them did much for them last year anyway. Yeah. They got Bruce Irvin in.
It's Clowney did win that playoff game by stomping in Carson Wentz's head, so there's that.
That's true. I forget about that. So at least giving people concussions and throwing them to the ground is what Jadeveon Clowney does well. But only 3 sacks, couple of, he did not perform super well last year. Although sacks are not the end-all, be-all of defensive linemen. So Seattle, I think you're right. Seattle's just always in the conversation for winning the NFC West. I agree. Any last thoughts on Seattle? Other than Pete Carroll's got is apparently a god. Like, he's immortal. He looks like a combination of a 50-year-old man who drank the juice of the gods.
He looks like the former U.S. women's soccer coach.
I don't know, but just saying a former U.S. women's soccer coach just already makes me think it's funny.
Yeah, I'll show you a picture later. The U.S. women's soccer coach looked just like him.
All right. So, any last thoughts on Seattle?
Yep, that's probably
it. All right. So we'll go on to you want LA Rams or
let's go Rams.
All right.
Why not?
We'll end on the Cardinals. We'll go LA Rams right now. LA Rams are the team I'm feeling the least comfortable about going into. I feel least optimistic about. It's weird because they very easily could be back to being good, right? Because they weren't horrible. They won games last year.
They were 9-7.
Yeah,
it's if they brought in if they had the last playoff spot last year, they would have been in. Because they added the new playoff spot this year. If they implemented that a year earlier, they would have been a playoff team.
Yeah. So they played but they just if you watch their games, their offenses just did not do very well. Their defense. Well, first off, they got rid of Wade Phillips, which I don't know why you do that. He did so many amazing things for your defense, and you say, well, we want out with the old men, we want in with some new men. So they got rid of Wade Phillips, the legendary defensive coordinator, and they do have Jalen Ramsey. They have Aaron Donald. They signed Leonard Floyd in the offseason, the former Chicago Bears, see if they can get something out of him. They got to keep Michael Brockers. He was originally going to sign with the Ravens, then he came back. They were like, you know what, kiss, make up. We got our D tackles all up in our grill. So their defensive line, they lost Dante Fowler free agency. He went down and hung out with the Falcons now. Linebacking core, they lost Corey Littleton. I think that's a bigger deal than people make it out to be because he was a good coverage linebacker. Corners, again, they got rid of Marcus Peters. They got Jalen Ramsey in the room. I'm not a huge fan of where this team's going. I just feel like they keep losing talent.
Yeah.
And especially defensively they lost talent. Now again they find ways. You do always kind of find ways to stick guys in different spots.
And they're pretty top heavy because most of their caps go into either Jared Goff or Aaron Donald. So.
Yeah, so defensively I look at it and I go, okay, they lost some pieces. I don't think the new pieces are truly going to be what makes you that much better. Offensively, and I've had people complain about this because I complained about them not addressing offensive line in the draft. They went ahead, they got rid of Todd Gurley. Now they got Cam Akers in the room. They got Darrell Henderson at running back as well. They still have Malcolm Brown, who's basically the slow discount version of Todd Gurley. I don't know why you keep him around, other than they extended him last year. So you have those 3 guys in your running back room. I think it's going to probably be a mixture of Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers. offensive line-wise is scary, though, right? Like, I don't hate their offensive line. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's worrisome, right? Because the left tackle still have Andrew Whitworth. He's like 7,000 years old.
Yeah.
He's been around since literally time began. He looks like it, too. He looks like Father Time. Like, if Father Time was built, like, if you thought God was stacked, that's what God would look like. It's Andrew Whitworth. They got Rob Havenstein. They got Bobby Evans also, who kind of both have played right tackle for them last year. Bobby Evans actually played a bit better. I think Havenstein had an injury last year, and Bobby Evans came into play. I thought that was a good move on their end. So maybe he comes in and plays guard from somewhere else. Maybe they keep him as the backup tackle because he did play well there. The rest of their team, it's like they got Austin Corbett, Austin Blythe, David Edwards. Their interior offensive line is just ugh. I think they had Brian Allen, who couldn't pass block either. Like their interior offensive line just had a lot of questions, a lot of problems, and they didn't get better. Tyler, it was Joe Noteboom is the name of the other guy they drafted to be the replacement of hopefully Whitworth. They're hoping he develops, but there's a reason why you wanted Whitworth to stay, which is because you didn't think Joe Noteboom was going to be good. So I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with this team's offensive line at all. It wasn't good last year. Why would I think it'd be good this year? And there's not reason to think it's going to be an improvement this year. So LA Rams did not like your offensive line. Your weapons are kind of cool though, right? Jared Goff, as long as he gets the calls in on time.
Yep.
From McVay.
Good receiving core. Got Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods.
Yeah, so as long as he gets the phone call in from McVay with Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, they no longer have Brandon Cooks. Instead, they got Van Jefferson, who they drafted last year. I do like him a bit. Thought he was drafted a little high, but I thought he actually kind of reminds me of Robert Woods a little bit as far as what he does well. They no longer have that true speed element. I really do feel worried with this team going into the year. I just feel like the other three teams in their division got better. They arguably did not. So, any last thoughts on the Rams?
It's not really a thought, just a little comment. Like I mentioned off air before that we were talking about, and one of the teams talked about the Niners before. They obviously got Trent Williams, and Sean McVay was cursing. As I got her report, he was like really upset when he found out that he ended up going to the Niners because one, that's a target they could have used.
Yeah,
but also a guy you hope to get ended up going to one of your big division rivals.
Absolutely. That was could they have made this deal sooner? Could they have maybe opted for trading somebody and instead of extending Whitworth, being able to get Trent Williams? Could they have worked out a deal with the Washington football team, formerly another name, and have gotten a left tackle who could have been there the next few years? Because Whitworth's 30-something years old, like the late 30s. We're talking about late 30s. This guy should be doing taxes for somebody at this point.
Yeah,
he should be doing announcing for the ESPN or NFL.com. So yeah, I did think that story was intriguing when he told me that the LA Rams, that McVay was cursing it. It's like, who you can bring that up with? Les Snead, the guy who you work across the hall from. Bring it up with him. Anyway. Last team on the NFC West list.
I mean, probably the most interesting one to talk about.
Probably.
Yeah.
You got the Arizona Cardinals, right? Off-season, they get rid of David Johnson. They tag Kenyon Drake. They get DeAndre Hopkins. They've got a lot of interesting pieces in that receiving core with Larry Fitzgerald and some younger guys like Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler. And also, we're getting second year of Kyler Murray, right?
Some guys hope to see if he can make the leap from.
Well, I definitely think he's the favorite for a lot of people.
Some people are saying he could be MVP.
I think he's the favorite of a lot of people to kind of take that step forward, to be like Lamar Jackson last year, to be like Pat Mahomes a couple of years ago, where he has the athleticism, where if you can use his legs very well, it'll be great. And you gave him a lot of weapons, right? You still, and I think that's important here. Having all those guys you can throw to. I think that Christian Kirk's the other one who they have as far as a receiver goes. So weapons-wise, they got weapons. They've got Kenyon Drake back. They've got Kyler Murray. Offensive line's been a little weird for them. It was weird for them last year. Kyler Murray was kind of running for his life all the time. That guy's got to have some sick cardio.
Yeah.
He's also the tiniest quarterback in the NFL, like even shorter than
Drew Brees and Russell Wilson
and Baker Mayfield and all the other tiny guys. He actually said, "I'm going to take you one up a notch." He's like literally my height. I would love to meet him. Just not because I want to shit on him for being short. I love the fact that he's short. And I love the fact that he, like, it makes him such an intriguing. It's like the reason why small running backs do very well. You can't see them. You're like, where did he go? He just disappeared. And I think he's got a solid arm. I liked him coming out 2 years ago. I like Kyler Murray. Offensively, we're going to see second year of Sean McVay's not Sean McVay.
Cliff Kingsbury. The
thing I liked about Kingsbury last year, he adapted really well, right? He would go from 10 personnel where it's all receivers and a running back to 2 tight ends. It's really, my question's the offensive line. They extended DJ Humphries. I like him. As far as center goes, Mason Cole, a couple of other guys there. J.R. Sweezy's there. Justin Pugh. Josh Jones they drafted this year in the 3rd round. So, and then they also signed Kelvin Beachum, formerly the Jets tackle. Marcus Gilbert was there, and then he said, "I'm opting out this season. I'm injured anyway, all the time." Former Steelers right tackle, by the way. So, offensive line, I mean, it's got to be better than it was last year, right? You'd think.
Yeah.
You'd hope.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I don't know. So, offensively, I think it's a solid move. Defense, man, I'm more intrigued about the defense, right? Yeah. You got one of the top pass rushers in the NFL there still in Chandler Jones. You got Patrick Peterson, who's going to stay another year, who wanted to leave last year, by the way, and also got suspended for like 6 games for steroids. So we'll see if he's going to take his like second year step down from not being able to do steroids. Defensively, like they drafted Isaiah Simmons. They have a couple of guys who are now in the second year with Zach Allen. They got Jordan Phillips, who they signed in the offseason. Linebacking core, again, like they got Isaiah Simmons, who they're going to probably use him as a linebacker, who could also be used as a safety. They got Budda Baker. They got what's his name, Jordan Hicks, who they signed relatively cheap. They got Devin Kennard. So linebacking core is kind of interesting. A lot of athleticism on this team as far as defense goes. Their second year, Byron Murphy. So maybe he develops to be the corner opposite of Patrick Peterson. All in all, I think it's a very intriguing team. A lot of interesting pieces. If they put it all together, big if. Keep in mind, like Vance Joseph is running the defense now. Onto his. We'll see how if maybe they're in their second year, they'll do a lot better. So before we move on to the AFC West, right, let's break it down. How do you think this division's going to end up? We talked about the Niners, the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals.
I think this one is the most uncertain, but might be a couple hot takes in here, but I think Hawks are winning the division. And the second one, first wild card, I'm picking Cardinals. I think they're going to be better than the Niners.
Ooh.
I think Niners will just miss the playoffs this year, and Rams are going to come in last.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Whoa! I agree with the Rams, but whoa! All right, so let me stretch on this. I'm going to go with Niners, Seahawks, Cardinals, Rams. I don't think this is actually that risky that I'm taking it, but I think the Niners D-line's still good. Not much has changed on the offense for the 49ers. They're still going to be able to run the ball. Seahawks, I get what you're saying. I was tempted to say Seahawks too, but I feel like the Seahawks actually got worse this offseason in some areas. Some areas, like the back end of the defense, they got much better on, and there's just like, I don't know. I just feel so weird with them. So they're still a top 2 team in this division in my book. And Rams, we talked about it. I have so many questions with the Rams. So let's go into the AFC, shall we?
Let's do it.
AFC, we got the AFC West. We got the Chargers, right? The LA Chargers now on Hard Knocks, along with the LA Rams, by the way. And because of that, they also extended Mr. Joey Bosa, right? The Bosa with the bigger Nosa. And that's how I tagged the Bosa guys, by the way. It's who has the bigger nose. Joey Bosa actually has a helmet for has a separate helmet for his nose.
Wow. Just roasting the Joey Bosa today.
He made money. He made so much money. You know what? Screw it. He made a ton of money. Good luck for him. Good on him. I like the player. $70 million guaranteed. $135 million $135 million extension. Just so much money.
Think of all the nose jobs you could get with that money.
No, he should keep the nose. It's fine. It's fine to have a big nose, right? It's okay. I'm just saying you have a big nose, but it's fine to have a big nose. This is what we have to start embracing bodies. So I embrace the Joey Bosa body and the rest of this offense, right? And the rest of this team, right? So let's talk about the defense first, because honestly, we already got into Bosa, his giant extension. I talked about it a bit already. You got Joey Bosa, Justin Jones, Linval Joseph, formerly of the Vikings, who they signed in the offseason, Melvin Ingram.
Chris Harris is now a L.A. Charger.
He is too, yes, the corner.
Derwin James is back.
Yes, Derwin James is back. Nazir Adderley. You got Casey Hayward to go with Chris Harris Jr. They got Desmond King, who is like a safety corner hybrid. He's really good, very good in zone coverage. Fits their system really well. They drafted Kenneth Murray. They've got Denzel Perriman, Drew Tranquill. Their linebacking core, even Nick Vigil's there. Uchenna Nwosu is kind of like a pass rush specialist for them. And then they even have Jerry Tillery, who they drafted last year. Maybe he'll come along too. So they got a lot of pieces on this defense, a lot of cool pieces. And I think that's why they didn't re-sign Phillip Rivers, is they could go, we could draft a quarterback this year. They could, keep Tyrod for 1 year on a very, very cheap deal and have him be the starter. And then they could spend money on extending Joey Bosa, maybe keeping Melvin Ingram around because he's also towards the end of his deal on his contract. And kind of moving forward with this defense and trying to build a new team without Phillip Rivers. So defensively, it's really sexy. Derwin James, I can't wait to see Derwin James and Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram all on the field again. Hopefully they stay healthy. That's kind of been a big Charger problem. Also, offense, right? Whole new offense with no Melvin Gordon, no Phillip Rivers, right? Totally different than what we saw last year. They still have Keenan Allen. They still have Mike Williams. Travis Benjamin's no longer there. So offensive line-wise, 3/5 of this offensive line I feel comfortable with, right? Bulaga, Trey Turner. As long as Trey Turner stays healthy, he plays about 13 games a season the last 2 years. Mike Pouncey, solid center, has played really well for them. They no longer have Russell Okung. Okung's been good. I like Okung, but he's with the Panthers. Now they have Sam Tevy and Trey Pipkins competing for that position. I have no clue. They did draft Forrest Lamp a couple years ago. They still have Dan Feeney to hopefully play left guard. He did not play good at guard when he's played at guard, but he's still a guard. Maybe they have Forrest Lamp finally take over. He had some injury issues. And then again, hopefully they figure out the spot on the left side of the line, because right now it's kind of sickening. But they do have a very athletic Tyrod Taylor. They have an athletic
former Pro Bowler, by the way.
Former Pro Bowler, yes. They have an athletic first-round quarterback in Justin Herbert. And they also have Hunter Henry, great tight end. Virgil Green, okay tight end. So they got a lot of interesting pieces. I think they're going to utilize the athleticism of their quarterbacks quite a bit. Again, you still have Keenan Allen there. They have Austin Eckler, who they extended, who I think they like his speed, his versatility, his ability to catch. He kind of makes it like they're playing a spread offense all the time. So I like Austin Eckler there too. And then if you utilized his ability to get out in space, Tyrod Taylor's movement skills, the only guy who I really feel like gets the short end of the stick here is Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
I don't think his skills really fit what Mr. Tyrod Taylor does. So overall, I like the team. The receiving core is kind of questionable outside of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Tight ends, they got a lot of decent tight ends. I'm very questionable as how this team's going to perform this year. They can kind of do the ball control, keep the ball away from the other team, plus play really good defense. I think that's going to probably be the strategy this year. Utilize a lot of the movement skills of their guys. And I see a strategy. I see a winning strategy for them. But everybody's got to stay healthy, and that's going to be hard. So let's move on to Denver, because I think Denver had maybe one of the more interesting off seasons,
Mm-hmm.
right? They Drew Lock is the planned quarterback for the Broncos.
Millionth time wonder Elway, million different quarterback.
Yeah, like I mean, like they're really betting on him.
Yeah.
They're
They
really
showed,
betting,
and
on
they did show that in the draft. They drafted receivers with their first 2 picks.
Yeah, so that I like that move, right? You're gonna figure out if you now. Here's the problem, right? You're now second-year quarterback. You only got like half a season last year of playing. You now have 2 rookie receivers who you drafted back to back, right? Top 2 picks: KJ Hamler, Jerry Jeudy. You have Cortland Sutton now in his 3rd year. You still have Deshaun Hamilton there if he even makes it on the roster. So the receiving core is a very young receiving core. Offensive line, I'm a little worried with too, right? Interior 3 are pretty decent, right? Dalton Reisner and Graham Glasgow, I like. Cushenberry, going to be a rookie. We'll see how he does his first year. Jawan James opted out, so he's not going to be playing right tackle for them, even though he barely played right tackle for them last year anyway. And Garrett Bowles likes to hold people like he's about to tell him I love him. So that one, I don't know. He a lot of flags on your offensive line if you're going to keep Garrett Bowles around playing tackle. So just saying. And they could always move guys around. Graham Glasgow has played center before. But everything else on their offensive line, now they do have Mike Munchak, who is the offensive line whisperer, former Steelers O-line coach. So maybe they do well this year because of Mike Munchak and he coaches up the guys. But it's a very, offensive line, very questionable. Receivers we talked about. Let's talk tight ends, right? It's going to be the 2nd year of Noah Fant. They also got Nick Van Nett in the offseason. They also drafted Albert Okwuegbunam. I think I said it right the first time, and now I'm going to keep fucking it up. Yeah. Both very athletic tight ends.
Yes.
Like almost like you're playing 4 wide if they're both on the field because Noah Fant's got a lot of straight line speed. Albert Okwuegbunam, by the way, played with Drew Lock in college, probably has a decent amount of chemistry already pre-built in, very decent movement skills. He just wasn't great in college, though, and there's a reason why they got him in day 3, but maybe they could pull something out of him. So, I don't know. There's some intrigue in that tight end core, especially Noah Fant. We'll see him in his 2nd year, what they can get out of him. Offensively, it's all going to come down to Drew Lock. And also, by the way, they have Pat Shurmur as their offensive coordinator. Interesting, because Pat Shurmur was rumored to really be into Drew Lock last year when his team drafted Daniel Jones. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. Very different kind of quarterback, by the way. Before we move on to the defense, and very different kind of quarterback than I've seen with Pat Shurmur in the past, right? He's had Bradford as a quarterback. He's had Case Keenum and got a good year at Case Keenum. Daniel Jones, Eli Manning. This is more on this is a weirder. I've never seen Pat Shurmur with this kind of quarterback, so I'm kind of interested to see what he does with a quarterback with a big arm. You want to move on to the offense?
Yeah, we'll go to the offense.
Oh, quick note though, they did sign DeMar Dotson, former right tackle of the Buccaneers, so that might help shore up the right side of that offensive line after Juwan James opted out. Defense is interesting as well, right? They have Von Miller. They've got Bradley Chubb, who's coming back off of injury. They did sign. They traded for Jarrell Casey. They re-signed Shelby Harris, who's going to probably be a solid back to being the 3 technique for them. They got a couple of other guys there: DeMarco Walker, Kyle Petco, Draymond Jones, who they drafted recently, Jeremiah Tachu. So they got a lot of pieces there for their defensive line. Von Miller and Bradley Chubb obviously being the big names of it, but Bradley Chubb's got to come back to full health, and we got to see it out of Bradley Chubb because he tore his ACL relatively early last year. He's hopefully enough time to recover. ACLs don't always seem to hold back defensive linemen, though, so it's not as worrisome, but you do worry if he might re-tear it. It comes back too quick. So the front end I'm not as worried about. Corner situation is A.J. Bouye, Bryce Callahan. Those guys I think are solid setup. They trade for A.J. Bouye in the offseason, a 4th-round pick for him. You got Bryce Callahan, who's I think really more of a slot corner, but we'll see what ends up happening out of it. They do have Kareem Jackson. They're playing. I think their plan is to play him maybe they'll play him outside. They have him listed as a safety on the depth chart, so maybe they're going to play him more at strong safety. But They have Justin Simmons, who they franchise tagged. He was their free safety last year. He's been really good for them. There's a reason why you franchise tag a player like that. Linebacking core, again, solid linebacking core, but nothing like nobody amazing there. Todd Davis is like the biggest name on their linebacking core. They're probably going to run a lot of nickel. And again, they probably focus more on, again, it's just a lot of pieces on the defense. And I believe in a defense run by Vic Fangio. I do. I like Vic Fangio. He's a good coach, very good defensive coordinator. He's part of the reason why the Bears were good for that year.
Yeah.
So I do believe their defense is going to be fine. But we will see. So overall, there's a lot of things that are look interesting on paper, potential good things about the Broncos, but there's things missing. There's things that I just don't feel totally comfortable about. I do like the receiving core though. So, any last thoughts on the Broncos?
I think other than it's a make or break year for Drew Lock, I think so.
Which is weird because it's only been really around for a year. Let's talk Raiders and then we'll go on to the Chiefs, the Super Bowl champs. So right off the bat, there's a quarterback controversy here, right? But a different kind of quarterback controversy. It's Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota, right? They signed Mariota in the offseason. They signed the receivers they have now. They have Tyrell Williams. They drafted Henry Ruggs. They have Hunter Renfrow now in his second season. He came on a little bit at the end of last year. Darren Waller played really good at tight end. So they're going to be attacking the middle of the field a lot with those two guys. Running back, they still have Josh Jacobs. Is going to be in his second year. He had a couple of injury issues last year. I got to say, when I looked at their offensive line to do my rankings, I almost forgot about them.
Yeah.
And I realized how good their offensive line is. They got Colton Miller. They got Richie Incognito, who's also going to be racist but also be solid at left guard. Rodney Hudson. They have Gabe Jackson. And then they also have Trent Brown, who they signed away from the Patriots a couple of years ago. That's a really good offensive line. Now, I'm not sure about the depth on the line, but they've got a lot of all five players you like. So, good offensive line, good running back, a lot of speed on the offense as far as the receiving core goes. I really do like this team. Jason Witten's there, too. He's going to be hanging out in the locker room. Probably
he's like the Greg Olsen of Oakland now.
Yeah, he's just going to hang out and talk. I think he's just there to talk about Monday Night Football with John Gruden. Do their own commentating in the locker rooms.
League's paying the Raiders off just to get rid of their awful on-air personnel.
Yeah, right. We don't want this guy on Monday Night Football. Please, Raiders, take these guys because we don't want these guys doing Monday Night Football. Because Monday Night Football sucked for a long time. I wonder who's going to sign Booger McFarland. Nobody.
New water boy for the Raiders, highest paid in league history.
Right. So offensively, I kind of like the offense.
Yeah.
Honestly, again,
low key.
I know a lot of people hated their they drafted Henry Ruggs and and Edwards, and they did draft a lot of pieces in the draft last year. But there was just I know people didn't like there was questions about the Ruggs pick. And I get there's other guys you could take, but that speed is a lot of speed. I like that. If that's your identity, you want speed at receiver, you want separation. I like that identity there. So overall, I like it. Defense, right? They're getting now they're in the second year of Cleveland Farrell. They got Malik Collins, who they signed in free agency. I actually think two of my favorite guys on this defensive line, Jonathan Hankins and Maurice Hurst, D tackles, like them both. I thought Hankins, underrated, former Giant, really good run stuffer. He was part of the reason why the Giants had that really good defense for that 1 year. Hurst fell in the draft because of a heart issue. I'm shocked he hasn't opted out yet. Or didn't opt out. They got Max Crosby, who actually is probably the best pass rusher as far as their ends go. Kind of weird when you draft a guy in the top 4 and then the guy who you took 3 rounds later or 2 rounds later ends up being much better. But hey, that's how it goes. They have Arden Key, who I forgot was even still in the league. They have him. He was supposed to be a first-round pick, and then nothing happened. When they signed Carl Nassib, who was on the Bucks, he was on the Browns. John Dorsey didn't like him. They had Carl Nassib loves giving out financial advice. I don't know if he's qualified for it, but he does it quite a bit. Yeah. Anybody who watched Hard Knocks the year the Browns were on it. So overall, the defensive line is solid, but not amazing. They had a problem getting to the passer a lot last year too. Their corners are interesting. I didn't realize they had signed Prince Amukamara. They got Trayvon Mullen, who they drafted, LaMarcus Joyner, Damon Arnett, who they drafted this year, and then their safeties are Demarius Randall. LaMarcus Joyner is kind of like a slot corner / safety. I think they're going to keep him at slot corner. So, but you could also do the same thing with Demarius Randall, who's going to probably be playing free safety for him. They also got Jonathan Abram coming back from injury. He had a good few first games and then got injured. So overall, though, if everything on that defense works together, again, they signed Corey Littleton. We talked earlier about the Rams. They got Littleton and Kwiatkowski. Their linebacking core is very athletic, good coverage guys. I think their plan is to go coverage and maybe blitz a little bit more with Paul Gunther's defense. I heard Paul Gunther felt like he had his hand tied behind his back. Well, we will see, right? Overall, I think it's make or break time for Mr. Gruden.
Yeah,
it's not, because unfortunately, the Las Vegas Raiders wouldn't fire him for shit because they got to keep paying him $10 million a year for the next half a decade. But still, I think it's make or break time for Mr. Gruden. In my book, right? You have a lot of good pieces here.
Yeah.
This should be a good team. And Derek Carr, you got to make sure you throw well. You got to make sure that Marcus Mariota don't take your job. Same thing, Marcus Mariota, show up, man. Use that athleticism. I want to see this team. I want to see this team be good. I like pieces of it. I just want to see, a good product. Do it. All right, Kansas City, Super Bowl champs. Legendary contract, Pat Mahomes. Nearly $500 million contract. Insanity. By the way, also they gave an extension to Travis Kelce. I think it was just so he didn't feel like he was left out on the extensions. Yeah. He still isn't paid as much as Kittle because he didn't have as much negotiating room and negotiating power. I felt like this was a way for them to kind of clear up some cap in the future, kind of rearrange things, make sure they keep Kelce for the long term. So they got Travis Kelce. They've got Pat Mahomes. They drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round.
Great piece for that system.
Oh, my Lord. I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I loved watching his tape at LSU. He was a driver of that offense. You could not convince me otherwise. There might be running backs who are not highly valued. People might be don't value running backs. But, dude, I liked his ability. I liked his play. So, they got Tyreek Hill. They got Sammy Watkins. They got McCole Hardman. Demarcus Robinson came back. Byron Pringle.
Best name in the NFL right there, Byron Pringle.
Yes, praise thee, O Lord, Byron Pringle. Sammy Watkins, I kind of am shocked what's going to go on with this guy. He knows he's not going to be the leading receiver in this core. He probably won't get many targets. I actually kind of like how they used him a couple of times. It kind of reminded me of he has kind of a weird running back build. I forget that, and I think that's also why he's kind of a little bit injured too. Offensive line kind of took a hit, right? They had two guys opt out. Third-round pick Lucas Niang, Kelechi Osemele came in now. He's going to help shore up the guard spot. The other guy who opted out, by the way, Lawrence Duvernay-Tardif, who is a medical doctor who's going to be helping people with COVID in Canada, which not really, wow, that kind of blew my mind when I found that out. He has an MD on his jersey. He's had it the last 2 years. He's been trying to become a doctor while being in the NFL. So their offensive line still have good tackles. Eric Fisher, Mitchell Schwartz. Mitchell Schwartz might be one of the best tackles in the NFL currently. So offensive line-wise, not amazing. Austin Ryder's probably average. Kelechi Osemele, if he gets back to form, could be really good. Eric Fisher's a solid left tackle. And, listen, I'll never doubt Andy Reid. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is kind of, I think, a full go right now because I think Damian Williams opted out. So it's going to be him and a bunch of Jags. And arguably, some people probably thought Damian Williams was a Jag too a couple of years ago. So offensively, is there really ever any questions when you have Pat Mahomes in the field?
Not one.
Or Andy Reid running your offense, either way?
Yeah, how to manage a clock, but...
How to Look at Clocks by Andy Reid. So defensively, right? This is probably they actually extended Chris Jones. Talked about that contract extension a couple weeks ago. Alex Okafor, Derek Nottie, Frank Clark, who they had traded for a year ago. Couple of other depth guys like Tyler Campasino, who they drafted a couple years ago. Kalen Saunders, who they drafted a year ago. They got a lot of guys who they drafted, kind of rotating in and out of there. Linebacking core, right? They drafted Willie Gay Jr. this year, second round. They have Anthony Hitchens. They have Damian Wilson, who is probably a Jag kind of at this point. Corner room's not great either. They got Rashad Breeland. Okay, getting older, already was kind of a slow corner to begin with, but they brought him back. There were also questions as to whether, didn't he have some kind of off-the-field thing too?
Not sure about that.
I think there was some kind of question mark about the off-the-field with him. Tyrann Mathieu, Juan Thornhill. Juan Thornhill did get injured, though, last year, so we would be... he got injured late last year. I think it was an ACL, so he might not be fully back to form yet. Tedrick Thompson's going to be there. He's an okay, solid safety. Everybody else, like, their corner room's kind of weak. It's very weak.
Yeah.
It's outside of Breeland. It's a bunch of no names. Hopefully, guys who develop. Carvarius Ward. Basically, that's it. The safety core is kind of good. I did like the safety core, provided Juan Thornhill comes back to health. Tyrann Mathieu's good. But defensively, I really worry about this team. Mm-hmm. It's going to be shootouts with them. They know that. That's why they have all the speed on offense with McCall Hardman and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and all the lovely weapons. And now Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But defensively, they're going to have a hard time stopping people, especially with those corners. So, any last thoughts on the KC? Nope. All right, KC or KFC. Let's go into who do we think is going to win this division?
I think you got to go with the defending Super Bowl champions, with the Chiefs taking the first spot, winning the division. Second place, I think it's going to be going to get a wild card spot, the LA Chargers. Like you said, they got a really good defense, and I have faith in Tyrod Taylor. I think he's a lot better than what people give him credit for. And also, if Tyrod's not playing up to his ability, you always have Justin Herbert, throw him in, get him some experience. But yeah, I think I like what you said about the Chargers, were just ball control, keep their defense off the field, and when they are on the field, just stop guys. Obviously,
reminds me of the Buffalo Bills when they made the playoffs.
Exactly.
The Buffalo
just throwing a lot of screens to LaShawn McCoy. You could see Tyrod doing that with Austin Eckler.
That's true. Actually, a very similar skill set between Eckler and McCoy.
Third place, I think it's going to be the Raiders.
Smokeland Raiders.
Las Vegas Raiders.
Oh, that's right. Las Vegas.
And the Broncos, listen, I don't see what the hype is with Drew Lock. I know he's got some good receivers, but I'm going to put them fourth place in the division.
I kind of have to agree with you, actually. Except I'm going to switch two teams on you. I'm going to swap Las Vegas and Los Angeles.
All right.
Because I think it's going to be, yes, I think the Chiefs are leading this division. I actually, looking at the offense of the Oakland Raiders and looking at all the pieces that they've spent money on and all the players that are there and literally what's the weakness of the Raiders outside of quarterback? I can't think of one. Maybe pass rush, but now you have enough coverage guys who it shouldn't be a problem. So I look at I look at Oakland or Las Vegas, as they are now going to be moving to Las Vegas into the giant vacuum cleaner dome, or the Death Star as people have called it. I look at their team and go, honestly, it's the one team I can see beating Kansas City in this division, and mainly it's because the offensive line's so good. They should be able to run the ball. I think an idiot can play quarterback there as long as they have a strong enough arm to throw a deep ball. You have enough speed where they have to respect your guys that are there. And then, defensively, again, pass rush is the real only problem, but, I think you can manufacture pass rush if you have enough coverage guys. And they do. I think they have plenty of coverage. So, I'm going to switch Las Vegas with the Chargers, and then KC's number one. Broncos, sorry, I know my cousin's a big fan of the Broncos. Part of my issue with the Broncos is COVID. The other thing is they have the least, amount of starting time at quarterback for their guys. Offensive line's kind of a question mark. Same thing with the Chargers. Defensively, I think there's a good argument for the Chargers too here, but I think if everybody stays healthy on the Chargers, I think the Chargers have so much talent on defense. I believe that the Chargers can do a lot with their team. There's things that make me worry a lot about the Denver Broncos. So I agree. But they do have Melvin Gordon. You were right. They swapped the Melvin. So, having Melvin Gordon on your team, I don't know. I actually like Melvin Gordon a lot, though.
That's good.
Very, very much used to running behind a bad offensive line with, a quarterback who is just a quarterback. Anyway, so that's it for this episode. If you want, you can follow the podcast at Draftvice on Twitter, at Draftvice_football on Instagram. You can follow me at BROJO. Death is in the end of the left punch like I did to your mama last night. Follow my other show, Punk Law 101. I do short videos, so go check out the YouTube. They're all on the YouTube that the Draftvice is on. That's if you're listening to this, go check the link in the comments.
And Punk Law is a great substitute for professional legal advice.
It is not. It is absolutely not. It's actually a warning on all the videos that say that. But good thing that you brought that up. Yes, it is not a substitute for legal advice, but it is fun. It's educational. You do learn a little bit about the law, the Supreme Court, and which is weird that you would think a guy who does stand-up comedy and talks about football is now talking about law. Weird that I do that. Anyway, and also follow Harry.
Yes.
Just follow him home. He wants friends. He wants people to hang out with. This was the highlight of his week.
Yeah. When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous about the past and about the future.